Good afternoon, everybody. Hope I'm visible and audible to everyone. And in case any kind of challenges that you are unable to see us, that's okay. We prefer you um, hear us out rather than see us, as everybody is, I think, comfortable the same way. Looks like, because most of you have off the videos, but we would prefer to say hello to all of you once, and I'll just ask you to open the videos in by name. Gautam, can we see you? Gautam, Bhargav, Kiran, Jabin, Jasper, Kriti, Lata, we can see you. Namita, Pavan. I mean, reading out, we are actually wasting our time, Varsha. Okay. Anyway, so I'm Vijay Lakshmi. I did my master's in engineering, and then I've been in this field for almost 23 years. And then I used to work for a training institute, Mohan's Networking Institute, which is founded by a couple of us, Mohan and myself. He's the main trainer. And then after training, we have come up with the CompuHive Knowledge Hub. And then that organization is more about, you are seeing the main screen now, CompuHive Knowledge Hub. It's more about, creating solutions or offering solutions for freshers, graduate in any domain. If you have a look at the grid, you can see that, we have varied services that we are offering there. One of the services is career mentoring, for anybody. So these webinars are part of those career mentoring services that we are doing. So from now, we are in April until December, we have scheduled different webinars. Most of them are tech related, different various technologies that are available in the IT sector. And some are mentors, like, to just give you an overview of, how to, which one to do, or, which has got more potential and those kind of things. So I'm going to introduce you to today's speaker, Mr.Gouri Shankar, and he works as a vice president for Akamai Technologies. And then, he has great experience in, you can see his picture on the screen right now. He currently is working on CDN technology. So I will just hand over the webinar to him, and then we will all sit back and listen to him. Over to you, Mr. Gouri. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking this, giving us this opportunity, to help the young minds to have a conversation with you and listen to you, so that they will be able to plan their careers.
Thanks. Thanks, Vijay Garu. And good afternoon, good evening, actually, everybody on this call. Where do I start? Let me start with my current job, and then I will go maybe spend a little bit more time on my career in general. So I currently work for Akamai Technologies as VP of Cloud Network Planning, and part of my job is to ensure if there's a clear cloud strategy for Akamai, various services that we deliver part of Akamai's portfolio to our customers. And it's a global role. So basically, my team is responsible for planning enough cloud capacity globally, all the countries. And we have a massive network, that we build to support all our client needs. And maybe I'll give some examples of, what we do in the coming, slides as well. And that's my job, basically to really, make sure the entire cloud platform of Akamai is performing, and has got enough capacity to support our clients' needs. But my career started almost like 25 years ago. I may be looking young, but I've been in this industry for 25 years. And I started. Started my first job with the HCL. That was back in '95, by the way. Even the computer industry was just started to pick up. The software industry was not that big in those days. 95 is when I started my career, and with HCL being the first company, the globalization still not happened. Software exports those days were, I think, from India were not that big either. But very early days of computerization, and I've worked on very, so many projects of actually introducing computerization for those big enterprises. I mean, I was the very first one to really work. My company, HCL, that time actually was the first one to implement computerization for entire LIC of India. Almost all the district courts, almost all the education institutions, they were all going through very early stages of adoption of computers, the computer technologies those days. And then fortunately, I was, with HCL those days, was able to, work with all of these, big companies to really implement the initial few foundational things on the computer side. Very, very, exciting those days. All the way started from learning from the DOS operating system, and then continued to progress into various streams. Linux was not there when I started. It was all called Unix, and there were multiple flavors of Unix were there. And I had an opportunity to work with HP Unix, Solaris, and various flavors of Unix, AT&T Unix. And if anybody heard about this AT&T Unix, BSD Unix, Unixware, I mean, it was, you name it, so many legacy Unix systems that used to be there those days, And we used to have this fun with these very computer terminals, where you could see those, green color, the text, where you actually operate from these, remote workstations and all this. It was very fun those days. But then
and exciting too.
Yeah, very. I mean, like the computers, and if anybody's seen those, we are seeing microcomputers now. And I've actually seen the mini computers, and then this, a smaller version of the supercomputers as well in big banks, like especially those banks that used to do these massive transactions and then do interbank transactions. There used to be these massive, computers that we used to, support those days. It was fun those days, but then ultimately, I kept working. I actually worked in various industries. That was my first job. But then I moved into software services companies. I worked in some financial services companies. And then, last 15 years, though, I've been in the same company, Akamai Technologies. It's purely into cloud-based products, and we'll talk about, the CDN technology and then some of the security things that Akamai does. And generally industry, what we see there, in the industry from this technology perspective. But yeah, I mean, I started from HCL and worked in various industries in the last 25 years. I've seen this industry go ups and downs. I mean, I've seen all the way from the opportunities that came from Y2K challenge back 95, where lots of people migrated to US. And then I've seen a downfall into 2001, 2002, when entire, the internet industry, web industry just, fell apart. And then I've seen, big, deep depressions like, the economic crisis, like the Lehman Brothers thing in 2009. So many ups and downs. And then very recently COVID, how that really played a, sort of a, massive crisis that entire world went through. There's so many ups and downs, so many learnings coming out of all of these, working in these different industries. And I've seen industry go through so much of ups and downs, but continue to innovate. I think the key thing that I've noticed is, doesn't matter, what the industry goes through, the innovation keeps happening. And the COVID was a great example for innovation. As much as havoc and chaos it threw at us, it crippled the entire economy, world economy. It did also throw very interesting opportunities in the healthcare system, in the technology space, in various, the online services that, it actually, when it comes to purely from a technology perspective, COVID, although it had its bad effects on the society, it actually made us progress from a technology perspective in the 2 years of COVID, made us actually leap forward by 10 years at least. Because that was how much the adoption of technology that I could see myself unfolding, in front of me as I was working with these cloud companies.
Very well said, Gouri. Very well said. Because you have seen the evolution, how we have transformed from strict classrooms to, now conducting webinars virtually and, bringing in very efficient people like you on board. Thank you.
No, yeah, it's a massive thing. I mean, just on the COVID thing, just to expand a little bit more on that, right? I think uh, even if you leave the technology, for a minute, 2 years of the COVID, the resilience and the adoption that people have shown in the last 2 years is just unremarkable, right? And on the technology front, a vaccine that used to take more than a decade to be launched, well, we could just do that in few months. The entire online. So very interesting. So the what we have noticed on our platform, as soon as the lockdown was strictly implemented, and then started, of course, India took very strong measures, but globally, as we went through the entire cycle of lockdowns in the phase one thing, the internet traffic in the first few months is doubled for various reasons. One is the content consumption went up so much. People sitting at home not knowing what to do. They're all watching a lot of OTT content, movies, and whatnot. And the kids were playing more and more games. The gaming industry was not, it was growing in India, but suddenly gaming industry, especially with so much of kids, so many kids and people in India, gaming just caught up big time. Online commerce and various new types of, the business models have started emerging in the online, the commerce space, like, all the ways from Swiggy's and Zomatos that were there before to, 5-minute delivery models and what. There's so many new things started emerging. To me, it was a
Our
very
main
interesting learning all
reason
through this.
for inviting you for this webinar is only that, because how the society has evolved in depending on the web content, connecting through internet, and how you people are managing and giving us, the very good services, where there is no time lag and secure. Please continue,
Absolutely.
sir.
Yeah, no, I think so. One other interesting thing that has happened in the era of COVID, I would say, is the cloud adoption. The cloud has always been there. I mean, last 10 years, you probably, all of you heard about cloud, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all these IoT, all these big things have been there, before as well. But sometimes, you need just the trigger point just for that adoption to just, suddenly change, from where it is to maybe 10-fold increase, right? And that's what we've seen. The reason is very simple. Especially when it comes to technology companies, the online content consumption went up so much. Be it, videos or, the short videos, like, social media platforms, like, the Instagram reels. It was TikTok that actually got this culture to, the people watching, OTT stuff and many other things. What this did is suddenly the demand went up so much that a lot of companies with their organic tech systems and technology, they couldn't just scale up to the demand that went up. So what this led to is suddenly adoption to the cloud. Because if you can't build on your own in your own enterprise, then the next alternative available is cloud, because you can do everything that you can, that you wish to do in cloud. Honestly speaking, and besides doing my day job, I'm also part of various initiatives at Akamai. I run the CSR for Akamai. I actually part of many, the innovation programs. There is one thing called Akamai Wizards, and I'm also part of Akamai startup ecosystem, Startup Connect. Even through CSR, I fund those social entrepreneurs with a social, outcome in mind, but using technology as a way to really bring that social change. So I actually fund those social startups using technology to make a big change.
I request you to tell a brief note about, what is CSR, because most of them are still graduates. It'll be great if you can just tell them a brief about what is CSR.
CSR is basically corporate social responsibility. Every company, so it used to be more of a optional thing for the companies before, but I think Government of India made it compulsory starting almost like 5 years ago, where every company with certain revenue and profitability should be spending, a percentage of their profits, for, this societal reasons, right? To make the society better. It could be education, it could be health, it could be any of the things that actually, have a larger impact on the society. Being head of the CSR for Akamai, so what we have, a good amount of funding, couple of crores, funding, which is from our profits that we use as per the government mandate. But then, because coming from the technology background, being a technology company, what I try to do is to use that CSR funding to the encourage startups using technology as a way to address these societal problems. Could be water challenges. We have actually partnered with IIT Chennai has a unit called ICCW, International. It's all about water conservation, right? ICCW. We partnered with them to fund some startups working in the water space and water conservation space. And these could be using robotics to identify big leakages in the water pipes of Bangalore, BBMP or any of the corporations that supply water, good quality water to the consumers. What if their water pipes are broken? They're deep, buried deep inside the ground. How will you identify those leakages? So there are some startups working in that space. We're funding these two, three startups because the work that they do is really going to make our lives better, right? Quality of water, testing. We actually funded bunch of companies working in that. And I know I can go on and on and on in this, but we want to discuss, more about the technology, especially the CDN space. I'll jump into that space as well, but I just want, before I jump into the real technology discussion, I thought being in this industry for 25 years, seeing ups and downs, and then being in this corporate industry for in a corporate world for some years, like Vijaya asked me to share some of my learnings, to be shared with this larger group, especially the people, the kids coming out of the college, students coming out of college, if they can learn,
Yes, the kids,
right.
we keep calling them kids because,
No, students, yeah.
but
Sorry
then
for that.
the
Yeah.
people who have joined here are all fresh graduates, just out of college, and very few are like who are working. So they should know what exactly is happening in the world and what kind of technologies are there. So please go ahead and then, give whatever you can share to them.
Sure. I mean, this bunch of things, based on my own experience working in this industry for so many years. But then one thing that I learned is just being more agile and adaptive is actually the one of the most important things for the people. Like, and I just spoke about the evolution that happened in terms of the technology, how COVID actually suddenly changed things. When these changes do happen, and if you as an individual or as an enterprise don't change, adopt quickly, not, if you're not agile, you will be out of business in no time. And I can give a very interesting example of, this is something I read in one of the Harvard Business magazines. It was a very interesting case study about Kodak. And you've probably seen many such companies like Kodak, like BlackBerry, and all of these Nokia. These companies were really great. They invented a technology that was not seen in the market. They went to the peaks and they were the best, and nobody could compete with them in those specific industries. Especially like Kodak, for instance, that was back in 1980s. They were the ones actually to actually invent the digital technology, but they were the last to adopt because they felt the minute they adopt to the digital technologies, their print business was all selling the film, and then all actually the other things that were actually
Correct.
they were big on revenue generating on, they could the sabotage on revenue on the existing business. Even though they invented the technology, they never used it. And then some other company actually infringed on this technology they invented. They paid a huge penalty to Kodak, and they become big, in few months, a few years, and then Kodak was left behind. It's just as an example, right? So all I'm saying is being agile, and then, being, adopt to the changing circumstances is, one of the key success factors that we should all be keeping in mind. And the other few other things, just staying focused, and then just do. So many times people think, and a lot of people ask me this question, right? Hey, what was your goal when you started your career, back in 95? My answer is, I didn't have any goal. I just wanted to do one thing. Any job that I take up, focused on, be fully focused on it, and deliver to best of my abilities. As long as you keep doing it, success will come to you. And, you don't need to have a big plan of, hey, I want to just, run this company and then start working towards it. Of course, you should still have some goal like that, and then, put some, step, the foundational things, to get there. But many times, it's just that, stay focused, deliver what what you take up sincerely, and then you will see the success coming your way. The other important thing, and I think this helped me quite a lot, is just to have some stretch goals. If I can run at, let's say, at 50 miles an hour, my goal should always be 60 miles an hour for that year. Having that stretch goal will push you out of your comfort zone and then make you nudge yourself to do something beyond, what your capability is. Again, I'm not saying that you should, from 50 miles an hour, you should set a goal of, 500 miles an hour, because then you're actually breaking yourself up. You don't want to do it, but then nudge yourself a little bit, just have that stretch goal. And then if you're working in an MNC, my suggestion is be assertive. Say yes when you need to say yes, say no when you want to. I see this such a culture difference in India when I compare to, I have a team in India, I have a team in Germany, I have a team in Krakow, I have a team in US, I have a team in various countries. And I see the cultural differences among these. The ones that are most successful are the, people that were assertive. They have a very, very clear thought process, and they know when to say yes, when to say no. And the last one I want to leave you all with, in terms of, this, what helped me is all about taking risks. Again, you should know, that there's a fine balance between taking a risk and then taking a big risk that actually can jeopardize the entire company. So I'm saying take risks where the failure also gets recognition. And I've done this so many times, especially if your headquarters is somewhere outside and then you're working far away from the headquarters. If you keep asking for permission to do something, you will never achieve something. You got to have the guts to seek apologies, not the approvals or, the permissions all the time. That basically takes some risk.
Gauri, I'll just ask, when we start our careers, and then we have this notion that we don't know everything, right? We haven't have that pedigree of being successful. Though maybe we have learned it, but we don't know. We are not sure about our decisions, right? So you rightly kept it that you have to take go-getter, do that, but what are the consequences? Like, if I want to stand out and take a decision, what will be the consequences that I go through? Will I be like I don't know. This is just a thought that came up, when you told that you just have to go ahead and then take those decisions. But sometimes we are so scared of the end result of it, right? Because with hard work, we get into good company. With hard work, we gear up ourselves. Then some small mistake, your career is sabotaged or something.
Yeah.
I mean, probably everybody should have a leader like you.
No, I think you got to be smart about it, and then you also need to understand the company's culture. There is most companies actually, and this is started from Toyota back in Japan. When they started to see the quality of the cars that they were delivering was not, meeting the standards that Toyota has set for itself, for themselves. What they said is, then they came up with an initiative. You will be surprised. It's called Celebrate Your Failures. What's happening is when something is not delivered to the expectation of the organization, people were trying to hide and then not actually highlighted. That led to more and more failures. And what Toyota started doing is to celebrate failures. If you fail in something, let's celebrate the failure. So they developed a culture where failure is seen as a foundation to success.
It's a very motivating thing. Celebrate the failure is a very, very motivating note, Gauri.
Yeah. So some companies implement it. I mean, I think a lot of these things, you got to be you got to be watchful about the local culture in that company. If I run my company, at least my team that way. No one should hesitate speaking, what their mind. No one should hesitate in challenging the manager and management or decisions. And I believe most of the MNCs that I have worked with had similar culture. So, but yeah, I mean, you got to be smart about knowing what kind of culture makes you successful in that company, and then do it. But if you ask me, you don't want to work for such a company that doesn't actually accept failure. You don't want to work for such a company that is not open enough to, when somebody comes and challenges their decisions, right? That's my personal view. But
one more last thing I'll ask you, okay, fine, I take a decision and then, I put my point across and all those things. But if I'm desperate for this job, so you did say that, I had got to be smart and all. but so much of dissatisfaction also goes through. Will it hinder my performance, or are there any mechanisms that are run by the organizations to deal with these kind of challenges in the companies?
Yeah, but from an individual perspective, if I'm the one, that went through that failure, for example, I took a risk, I took a decision, and then I went through the failure. You know, the best I could do in the scenario is to be very honest and open about it. But what is more powerful than that, that companies generally love is share your learnings. Because you may have failed as an individual, but your learning can be helpful for the entire company. So that's where I say be transparent, be open, share your learnings, and that's what companies are looking for, and the corporates are looking, because it's not lack of, we were discussing in a very interesting debate the other day. It's not lack of ideas or innovation that actually make a company successful. It's lack of not knowing which which ideas to not invest in and which ideas to invest in. That's what actually makes a company successful or a failure thing. Now, if by sharing the failures, you're actually letting the company know which ideas that you don't want to bet on. It's a good thing to happen, in my view. So companies love that
These days
kind
there
of
are
culture.
so many. Sorry to interrupt. These days there are so many forums, where you can actually talk about your journey and failures or your anger or these things. But then it's not only about talking, right? It's more about how we are arriving at working on that solution, because this generation, our generation is different. This generation patience levels are little less, so that's what I was trying to pinpoint there. Where they need a media where they can express themselves and find a little bit of guidance. Probably we should actually do that. Good. We have actually gone little out of our this thing. Yes, please continue, and then give them.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much some of the things that at least I thought I should share with the larger audience and see if some of that may be useful in your careers. And trust me, a lot of these learnings are just not about career learning. These are actually even personal level as well. They play a big role. So it all depends on how do you want to apply those things. Good. Now coming to the main topic, and a lot of people maybe are still, wondering, hey, what is this all about? This is not what we came for. So let's get to that part of the discussion, and hope I can share my screen.
Yeah. While Gauri is on it, you don't need basics, any kind of prerequisites to understand what Gauri is going to talk about now. But if you have any networking, computer networking idea, like how the communication happens and all, I think you will be good to go to start with what Gauri is going to share. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gauri?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end.
Yes.
I allow Zoom to share my screen. So I think I need to allow that. I did. Okay.
Bhagya, I think you should give permission to.
Yeah, no, I think it is now. I can share my screen now.
Yeah. So for the rest of the people, Bhagya is our tech head, and Sridhar is the one who has been enabling you, into the attending the webinar and all. So yeah, let's go ahead and then.
Do you see my
yes,
main screen, or do you see my presenter panel?
Anybody is not seeing, you can just raise your hand on the chat window. We'll take care of that.
All right, so let's get into what is CDN and cloud security. Again, cloud security is a large space. What I'm touching is a small part of the cloud security that's relevant from a CDN perspective. So just bear that in mind. Don't think that whatever I'm talking in this next few slides is only about cloud. Is the only cloud security thing. There's a lot more than that. I'm only touching few aspects of cloud security. So this is what I intend to do. Spend a little bit time talking about fundamentals of CDN. What is CDN all about? Why is it important? How do we use CDN in our day-to-day lives? And it plays actually a massive role that you don't get to see, honestly, because it does it all behind the scenes. And then second one, I'm going to touch upon some what's called, what I call it as design principles. If you are actually a software developer in the future, you want to become an architect, you're in operations, wherever you are, these design principles help you build manage large-scale platforms that you see out there. The third one is just talk about this cybersecurity, some of the solutions which are CDN specific. I don't think we'll have more time, but then if time permits, then we'll actually high level touch upon the SDN and edge compute and then cloud compute. What are the differences between the two? Good. This is before understanding CDN. It is very, very important to understand how internet operates. This is sort of a simple schematic image that shows how various networks within the internet are connected. So this is basically, internet is network of networks. There's no centralized control. I mean, you just think about it. In India, we probably have some 100 different network operators giving internet services, be it a broadband service or a fixed line service, or it's a satellite-based internet service or a mobile-based internet service. You are getting the internet service to your phones and your laptops, whatever device that you use through these service providers that actually sell internet packages.
So any fresher who is watching this slide right now, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, these things, you don't need to worry. You can visualize them as a simple host, your computer. Currently, you can think that it's your computer. Okay?
Yeah. So think about this way. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, these are all networks connected in the internet by various service providers. Now, one of the tier 1 could be in India, let's say Airtel, other one could be Vodafone and Jio, or these are all the tier 1 network providers who actually sell internet services. Now, this is like this. All over the world has many such ISPs that are coming together, connecting their network with each other, and that makes like a virtual network, which we call it as internet. So this internet, if you see the top section here, is connecting billions of computers, right? Devices, computers, whatever you call it as, using lakhs of networks, actually tens and thousands of networks like this that you see tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And these services or networks are actually operated by thousands of ISPs globally. And these ISPs connect with each other using backbones. You probably heard about SIMI-V2, SIMI-V3, SIMI-V4, all these sea fiber cables that connect one continent to the other continent, one country to the other country. So that's how the internet is formed. Now, what is the challenge with such a massive internet that is connecting, various continents and countries and cities and, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities and managed by hundreds of ISPs globally is because there is no centralized control. No one can give you, guaranteed quality, right? So and this also leads to congestion and packet loss, because if these two networks connect with each other and they have very limited, connectivity or capacity between those two peers, that leads to congestion. And then when somebody is trying to access content from that congested network, they will be seeing a lot of issues. Now, a simple issue could be if you're watching a video, the video will keep rebuffering. Like, hey, one frame comes and then you wait for 2 more seconds and then the next frame comes. Or the video itself takes a lot of time before it starts. You go to the app, click on the video takes 1 minute to launch. But, we know based on the research, people's patience levels, this was back those days when internet was new, people were fine waiting for 10 seconds for the video to appear. That was back 10 years, 20 years back. Today, the patience levels of people, it's based on a pure research, is 1 second. If the video, after you click on an app and the video doesn't show up in less than 1 second, the chances of you abandoning that video and go to some other app that's performing well are very high. So obviously, quality of service in such an internet is just not easy. And these ISPs, to manage the demand that's growing on the internet, these ISPs need to constantly upgrade their infrastructure that costs a lot of money, and they are not able to keep up with the cost. India, as an example, data services in India is world's cheapest today. Be it on mobile phone or broadband services that we have today, India has the cheapest data rates. What does that mean? If you charge so little, obviously that your revenues are going to be so little, but if your costs are going to skyrocket, you won't be able to scale up to the costs to meet the demand. And the last one is, if you sell internet service, you're only getting that fixed monthly fees. But who is making the money in this industry is basically the people who are actually building services on top of the internet, not the guys actually who are selling the internet itself or services itself. Like, it's monetization on the internet for these people is just getting highly difficult, because generally speaking, you pay that fixed 400-500 rupees or 1,000 rupees, for your broadband or mobile 4G connectivity. But you spend much more than that for your online shopping or your watching or your OTT stuff or many other things that you do. That's probably 10 times more than that. But who is getting that money? Not these guys. And that's going to those people who are actually running those apps and running those, the aggregation points. So the internet, just to kind of sum it up, internet is highly congested, and in its own form, it cannot scale to cater to the growing needs of the people. Now, on one side is this. Let's also look at rest of the internet ecosystem. On the consumption side, what's going on? These are the real numbers I pulled from various websites. Today, we have about, this is, I think, last year numbers, 2021 has 4.95 billion active users, growing at 4%. 4.95 billion, just the users. If you look at the number of devices, smartphones basically, there are about 6.26 billion smartphones. Again, they're growing at 5.7% growth. And there are 29 billion devices that are connected devices. These are like, smart devices, we call them. It could be your refrigerator, it could be your washing machine that has some, form of smartness so that you can actually interact with. There are about 29 billion such devices, and they're growing really at a rapid pace. And I think in next 4 or 5 years, everything at home, everything in office, everything outside will be connected in some form or shape. People spend 7 hours a day on an average online today. It was probably 3 hours before COVID, and it almost doubled in the last 2 years. People spend so much of time online. What does this do? This generates 94 zettabytes of data, estimated to be in 2022. 94 zettabytes. 1 zettabyte, by the way, is, I think, 1 trillion gigabytes. And we are talking 94 zettabytes worth of data that will be consumed on the internet, which in the previous slide I showed you, it just can't scale to that level of demand. People in 2021 spent $3.8 trillion online in various online e-commerce portals. These are global numbers. I didn't make up these numbers. These are real numbers, came from various data points. If I, put these numbers on top of the internet that is congested, there is no way for any of us to get good quality of service for anything that we do online, if not for the CDNs. And this is exactly where the CDNs play a role. I will give an example of what CDN does with a real example, and then we'll go into the details. Think about banking system 10, 15 years ago when there were no ATMs. For you to do any cash transaction, to either to deposit or withdraw money, billion plus people in India were going to banks literally to really spending hours in the queues to either deposit the money or encash money. What happened after ATMs came? And they became, ATMs became available in every corner of the city. I don't remember going to a bank in the last 5 plus 10 years, maybe roughly even more than that, going to a bank to withdraw cash. Never. Or deposit cash. It all was possible through ATMs. What ATMs did is very simple. They made the service available at your doorstep. What did that do? Then you didn't need to cross your own boundaries or your neighborhood to go to the bank. If millions of people are coming to the banks to do the transactions, the banks are always crowded. But with the ATM setup, especially with the cash transactions, you've been able to distribute the cash at the edge or at the point where the end users are living. And that's exactly what the CDN does. By doing it, CDN is nothing but a group of geographically distributed servers that speed up the delivery of web content by bringing the content close to the end users. If you're watching a movie on any of the OTT platforms, be it, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hotstar, you name it. If they are using CDN as a technology to deliver that content, And if you're watching that content from Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, Delhi, it doesn't matter where you're consuming that video from. Your video is coming from the next, the pop that is CDN pop that's sitting in the same metro. You don't need to have somebody, let's say, from Delhi come all the way to, Mumbai to, where the server is hosted to get the content. No need, because I'm making a copy of that content available right next door to you. So you're watching something that is already at very close to you. So your quality of service that you're getting and the scale at which that can be delivered, and this, and security aspect, we'll talk about it, suddenly changes the entire landscape of the internet with the CDN in the mix. There's no big portal, app, or an e-commerce or an OTT or any of the short video platform today operates without using CDN, because they can't just scale. And all the issues that I spoke about internet, they will come bite them if, as they scale up. So ATM is a great example of, explaining how CDN is helping people. It's basically caching the content at the edge and delivering the content at the edge, so that you don't need to come to, the main branches all the time to consume the content, or even publish the content.
Experience.
All right. So moving on, there are multiple types of CDNs. I'm touching on 4 of them, most commonly used CDN technologies. The first one is actually peer-to-peer. If you're in the past, I think even it's still true. If you're into downloading pirated software, you probably know about this, called BitTorrents in the past. It's all about, a piece of content. Every mission in the network, every, device or computer in the network acts as a peer. And then, all these peers form a CDN type solution. So if you are part of the network, you can easily download the content, although it is not centralized. It doesn't have a centralized control, and nobody can guarantee good quality of delivery. It is quite popular technology that's available, which is called peer-to-peer technology. And the other CDN technology is actually called based on Anycast. If you're all, I know some of you, maybe most of you are coming from the networking background or studied networking in your engineering. Anycast is a very simple technology where you can have one common host name and then route all the traffic. I'll talk more about it in the next slide, but route all the traffic from that location to the servers only in that location. So it's basically trying to look at where the demand is coming, where the supply is, in this case host is, and then try to bring them close to each other. And there's a DNS based. Most of the CDNs use Anycast based technology, by the way. And there's this DNS based technology is basically the mapping the users based on the DNS, client DNS. Very few companies use this. Akamai pioneered this technology. They actually patented this technology back in '98. From there, the company started. And this gives some additional benefits over the Anycast. Again, each one has its own pros and cons. And the last piece actually is private CDN. This is basically, some companies do develop it on their own. Some companies buy it from off-the-shelf solution from various vendors, and they actually build it for their internal use. If the company has a lot of branches all over the world and they want to improve the performance of their applications, they build this private CDN to give good quality experience to their employees or their users. If you guys can give me 1 sec, I'll close the door because a lot of noise is coming. There's a huge rainfall outside my house. So just a sec.
Yeah. Meanwhile, who are not from, networking background or anything, probably, yeah, Gauri is back. So anybody who's not from the networking background, you see all these, you heard about this DNS, P2P, request routing and all those things. Don't worry about all those things. Okay. In case if you want to learn, then you reach us to us. We will help you out. But then understand the main concept of what CDN does. It's a very, very interesting thing in the current generation right now.
Absolutely.
Because we are also dependent on it.
Especially with the amount of data that's growing and the cyber threats that are ever increasing on the internet, and not knowing CDN is going to be a sin in the future. Okay. But anyways, you will learn more of these things. I'm trying to explain it in as simple terms as possible so that you all can at least get the macro point. This is just an explaining a little bit more on the Anycast technology. What's happening in this is you actually see these computers and computers at the periphery of the internet. There are these Anycast hosts in the orange boxes. These are called servers or hosts, and there is a website that's at the left corner. I mean, left side of the slide, which is basically a big computer with a browser on top of it. So this is the main computer that's hosting the website. Think about it this way, and this content need to reach to all of these users. Some may be coming from India, somebody is coming from US, somebody is from Europe, somebody is from Australia, somebody is from Japan. These users are coming from various countries, various metros, but the content, in this case, the website is, let's say, hosted in Mumbai, in India. So how will you get good quality of, this website performance to somebody living far away from India in US? In the normal internet scenario, it's just not possible. You literally have to wait because there's a network latency that's there. I mean, it's now 300 milliseconds of latency depending on which part of the US that you live in. And then if the web pages are very, very sophisticated, very heavy nowadays, and if that web page needs to make 300 millisecond round trip delays, for every small object it's delivering, by the time you see that web page on your computer, it's going to be a couple of, maybe seconds. By then you lose patience. But then what this Anycast CDN is doing in this case is it's actually taking the content from this main website, keeping a copy of that at every point on the internet. And then when the request comes, that request gets served from the server that's in the same metro. And obviously the latency is, close to 10 milliseconds in that case. And then because of, it's only a small network pipe that the content is going through, quality is, guaranteed in most cases. This is about Anycast. In this case, what it's doing is, in this case, it's looking at the user's, location and then sending that request to the server in the same location. And then there's a DNS-based, CDN solution. This is something similar from an overall, the philosophy perspective, but just technology, wise, it's a little different. Basically, this gives a little more control because it not only looks at the location where the end user is coming from, it also looks at what is the best way to deliver the content to that end user based on the network conditions at that point in time. If for some reason in that 1 minute of the request that's coming from the end user, that network for some reason is congested because some fiber cable got cut. In Bangalore, I don't know how many people live in Bangalore. Every other day they dig the road and new roads get laid, and the next day, BBMP comes and they dig it, and the next day the BSC guys come, the next day Airtel guys. So every day there is digging, and then the fibers get cut, and the network gets congested or broken. So when such failures do happen, in the DNS based technology, you have a lot more flexibility of sending the request to, locations where the performance can be a lot better. Again, I don't want to walk you through the entire example, but think about it this way. If you are the user, going to some website like a www.example.com, that request from your client DNS goes to, main DNS. From the main DNS, it goes to Akamai kind of CDN, and then Akamai then finds in real time for this client what's the best server that I should be sending the content from, and then does the entire mapping. And that's called DNS based CDN. It works quite well. Little different technology than Anycast technology. So that's a little bit about what is CDN and different types of CDN technologies. I know if you have questions, by the way, please make a note of all those questions, and we will have some time to discuss post this slide presentation. Now let's quickly move into design principles. Very important, and I would say, if you want to understand how these very large platforms, be it Akamai's or Google's or Amazon's or Facebook's, any of these large platforms are operating without any glitch, what do they do differently? I mean, I've worked in the IT industry for several years. For an enterprise IT team to keep a website and web application running without or with a zero downtime, it's been a massive ask in the past. Then you need to implement this technology, 1, 2, 3, 4 failover mechanisms and whatnot. But these large platforms, what they do when actually they build the entire platform is to keep some of these design principles in mind. I'm not saying these are the same design principles that everybody uses for every platform, but I'm giving a generalized version of, hey, what do you need to keep in mind when you build a massive platform is these 6 design principles, my perspective. We'll go, again quickly, starting with the first one.
Yeah, 1 second,
Mm-hmm.
Gauri. Actually, I think, last 2 years have been, everything has been online. And then, when we attend, all of them, most of them must have attended their classes through internet, where the connections are really, really bad. So, this steps that you are going to talk about will really help them to understand why they face so many challenges, and maybe they can try out or become innovative in coming up with new perspective of building some tool, to take care of these challenges. Because moving forward, I think once we are used to having things easy via internet, maybe that is how the future is going to be. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
most of you will be focusing
Yeah.
on these steps so that, you can become some innovative leaders, and do something to the industry now.
Absolutely. I mean, if you embed these design principles in the application, in the software that you develop, the software is going to become so resilient that that can easily address a lot of the challenges that we were facing when we suddenly moved from offline to online classes. You know, because fundamentally those applications or systems that we used didn't follow all the design principles that I'm going to talk about. First one is ensure significant redundancy. What is redundancy? You know, in the previous slide I spoke about any cost technology or a DNS based technology where lakhs and lakhs of the CDN the hosts are sitting all over the internet delivering the content. But one server can fail anytime. Hundreds of servers can fail anytime. It's all nothing is in our control. Entire network can fail. A fiber cable can get cut. When any of these failures do happen, is your application and the software that you developed or various components that you developed in the software redundant enough or resilient enough to be able to quickly, even before the end user realizes, switch over to the next, the server available, the next network available. And a lot of this happens already, by the way. If you're watching, a video flawlessly, on your phone or an app, don't think that nothing is failing in the background. Hundreds of things are going wrong, honestly, all the time. It is just that the software that is used, if that followed the right, redundancy principles in the components that they developed, they are making it completely non-transparent to you. I mean, transparent to you. Those failures are happening, but that's transparent to you. You continue to watch a high quality video on your phone because of the, the principles that they applied in developing the software or the system. The second one is ensure high reliability. In the sense, reliability comes from the fact that your software as well as the hardware and the network that you develop can is reliable and then doesn't fail at all, right? So how do you do that reliability as a culture in your development life cycle? The third piece is distributed control. Very important in the CDN technology that I spoke about. If the technology, that whole thing is not, this control is not distributed, if all of that sits in one centralized location, if that one centralized location fails, your entire technology fails. But if you allow the decisions to be made at the edge of the internet using if it is an application, then at the various components of the application, distribute the control and they can all make the right decision at the right time, you will never, see a catastrophic failure, right? The fourth one is fail, stop, and restart. If you see some failure, the system.
I have one thing to add here. So with distribution control systems, is it automized now? Like, most of the networking things are automized, right? So this distribution control is also automized, or you still have to have a network engineer, somebody monitoring and then take control over it?
I can talk about for Akamai, and I can tell you this is how the big clouds operate. We don't really worry if one server, 100 servers, 1,000 servers go down. We don't worry, one network going down in one part of the country or in even multiple countries at the same time. Because the decision, the system sitting in that location will automatically send the signals so that when the next request is coming in, we know this part of the network is completely failed. We shouldn't be sending any more requests. and then we should now find some other working healthy network that's where we should be delivering. So all of that, control decisions, distribution of that happens, at least in the platform that I
Particular
operate.
tool that is working, you can name it on the distribution control system, or we will put it under CDN.
There is no commercial off the shelf thing. This is the CDN I'm taking as an example, but it could apply to any platform also. It's just when you develop your software that is meant to operate in multiple different nodes, hosts, how do you distribute the control? Is the philosophy. To me, a lot of these things I'm talking about is engineering principles that you need to adopt when you build the application from the ground up, right? And as you build that culture, as you build that practice, then all the components that we develop will start inculcating this culture, and then they will then be able to become more resilient and then more smarter. And the fifth, let me talk about.
If somebody wants to work in that space, what kind of knowledge, skills that they require?
To be honest, everything from a skills perspective, everything boils down to knowing those, programming languages, or knowing those, the technology platforms. This one is less of a skill. This is more of a competency. Even if you have, let's say, a very powerful Java development background or C++ development background, any software background that you have, but while building your software, if you're not keeping in some of the basic design principles, like very simple thing that we keep telling in the software industry, which is basically modular. Make your software modular enough so that we can quickly identify where the problem is. Where use that module for some other software. Because then this module we don't need to rewrite the software. Right? These are all fundamental basics of software development, regardless which software it is, which software language that you're using. These are basically those principles. Right? They apply to anything that you do. Got it? And again, distributed control means yes. How do you really develop various decision making? Yeah.
Okay, shall I put it as people who are good with software skills like coding language, and also people who know some background of how this system works, will do a better job when giving this kind of automatic systems?
They will do a lot better job knowing the design principles and how to develop the software. See, software development can be very simple. What is software development? It's a logic. You're automating something that's manually done, and you're applying a logic and then, making it repeat and rinse and repeat. But if that software can also follow these design principles that you developed, then that will become completely, foolproof. That's what we mean. Okay.
That's a good insight. Yeah.
Yep. Let's, given the interest of time, let's keep moving. So zoning for change. Again, this is not only software developers. This is equally useful for people driving operations, running operations, working in operations, everywhere. Zoning for changes, right? And it is a very, very powerful principle, which is basically if you make a change to your, to your network, or it could be software, hardware, whatever it is, that you make sure the change is zoned in such a way that the change starts with a small fraction of the network and then steadily progresses and then makes the change applies to the entire network. Now, in our, my world, it's about, hey, make the change available in one host, and then after that hundreds and thousands and lakhs, and tens and thousands and then lakhs. As the change progresses slowly in this zoning manner, you want to understand my change, is it causing any side effects or not? If it is causing a side effect, again, I need to have some health checks that I need to do constantly, then stop progressing the change any further, right? That's called zoning for changes. And the last principle is just fault detection and mitigation. In spite of having all this knowledge, intelligence, and then great software, you still need to have very powerful operations and then alerting. And you got to be able to identify the faults, have the right set of procedures, right set of process and tools to mitigate them quickly, right? So all of these, if you imbibe in your projects, software projects, or even networking projects, right? I think you will probably become one of the highly successful engineers in your field. Good. Keep moving. That's about design principles. And I think I've got a few more slides and I'll talk about cybersecurity and then some of the cybersecurity solutions and open it up for Q&A session. This landscape is dramatically changing. Honestly, in the last 2 years of the COVID, again, like as much as cloud adoption has happened, maybe 5 times more than that, the cyber security threat landscape also is gotten worse. There's so much of ransomware, and you probably read it in news every other day. Somebody fraudulently taken money from your bank. You clicked on a wrong link, and then gave an OTP that you shouldn't have been giving, and ended up losing money. All of those are cyber attacks. Cyber criminals are all around us with very, very sophisticated tools. For example, tools. All it takes today, by the way, is $5 to get credentials of people, more than million people. If I pay in the black, in this market, a dark web we call it as, I pay $5, I can get access to at least a million credentials of people, their usernames and passwords, just for $5. There are tools in dark web that's out there. That's really changing the way cybersecurity looks now. Just put some numbers into perspective, right? So
That's scary.
it is scary. This is, some of it is Akamai own data, some of it is also came from the various research reports on the internet. Last year in June, Akamai has seen on the internet 113.8, roughly 114 million web application attacks on one day, single day. 114 million attacks on all the websites. Maybe there are lakhs of websites, but still 114 million attacks, web attacks, massive, massive thing on a single day. 40 to 50% of the web traffic today is all bots. It's not actually humans, it's bots. Of course, there's some good bots and bad bots. And actually, we estimated, out of these, 40, 50% bots, 50% of them are actually bad bots. And that are those bots that are not supposed to know your data. But they come, they web scrape your websites. They actually take your rate cards and then use those rate cards. There's an example I'm giving. Bots can do a lot of other things as well, and then use it for their own purpose, and then start causing losses to these big e-commerce bots. All of this is possible. Between Jan to June last year, there were 6 billion total attacks. And the most common attack was SQL injection. This is a very known thing. Every web application has some SQL database behind, right? And this SQL injection is the most common attack that happens on the internet, where somebody finds a vulnerable SQL server or SQL database and then takes out steals all important confidential information from your database, which can be very, very, business impacting for you. Companies can get shut down in no time because of all the regulatory compliances that this might have breached. And banks are taken for ransom, like, hey, pay me $1 million, if not I'll leak this day, right? And the banks have no choice but pay those, again, using some cryptocurrency or something, get out, to make sure that their customers are safe. If not, they lose their credibility. There were 1 billion
supports Visa, right, Gouri?
Yeah. There were attacks. There was, a lot of credit card information that got stolen in one of the retail company in US. I don't want to name the company, but you can go watch those reports. And all the mistake was the wireless transaction between the user and the payment card was happening unsecured way. Somebody, all they did is they installed, a simple traffic filter, sniffed all the traffic happening between the device and this credit card machine or the Wi-Fi, and they got access to all the credit card information that was being swiped at the time in one of the retail companies. People are smart to really do all of these things. And 1 billion credential abuse attacks. Credential abuse is basically very simple. Somebody because we all have access to various web applications and email services and all sorts of services where we have a username as well as a password that is getting stored in that application's database. If somebody accidentally or intentionally gets access to that database, means our credentials are compromised, and that means somebody can log into your banking website using the credential that was stolen from some other website, and then there you go, they get access to your banking account. And there are these DDoS attacks, which are basically, these are small in numbers, generally speaking, but they're massive, like 1 TB worth of traffic sent to your website in in a second that, that website comes crashing, no matter what you do. So these are all the different types of security threats that you once sees on the internet. And there's so many security solutions available. I'm only outlining a couple of them that are more CDN specific. There are solutions called DDoS protection solutions, which are basically the example that I gave on CDN, like an ATM machine, where the machine can deliver the content, but the same machine also can safeguard you from the attack. And if an attack comes, at the edge of the internet itself, you can inspect if that attack is legitimate or not. If it is not legitimate, block it there itself. Don't even let the request come all the way to that banking website. Just stop it there. So the CDNs, because they can deliver the content, they can also protect that content from being stolen or from this DDoS attack. Similarly, bot management. Now, one thing that has happened nicely in the last several decades is the advancements of artificial intelligence and machine learning that is helping to derive so much of intelligence from the historical data. Today there's so much of data that's available that can really show what are the good bots, what are the bad bots, what are the good websites, what are the harmful websites, what are the user behaviors, and what are not user behaviors. If all of this intelligence, if I can feed into a system and use that to really block these threats coming in, I can really make my access on the internet highly safer, right? So that's what these solutions are doing. Bot management does the same thing. Threat protection, right? Now, and simple solution for a threat protection could be DNS, right? Now, when you click on any website, before the website opens up, it first talks to the DNS server, and DNS says, hey, this is the IP address of the website. So then the website comes on your browser. But if I integrate my DNS with the threat data that I've developed, and if my DNS can quickly tell if the request for that URL is for a harmful website or because of a ransomware website, I can stop that request at the time of the DNS itself, and I will not be letting that user to go to that harmful website and lose data or lose money. I can do easily that today. And the fraud detection, like credential stuff. Today, there are technologies available. Even if somebody literally knows my ID and password, by the way, if this fraud detection technology is implemented or credential abuse technology is implemented, protection, the system will know, even though user ID and password is exactly the same, the user behavior, which could be the computer from where the request has come in, or the way the user is moving the mouse, the way the user is typing the keyboard clicks, these are all user attributes. Besides applying the login and password details, if the system also can look at the user behavior and then say it's a legitimate request or not, I can stop a lot of fraud today. And that's what these solutions can do. Highly advanced solutions, leveraging a lot of data and insights from the data to really do these things, protecting all of us, honestly, from these various types of security threats and vulnerabilities.
So, from a user perspective, Gauri, is there any scope of user being able to identify a good bot or a bad bot?
It's difficult for the user to do himself. You can be smart enough about it. So, see, think about it. Bot is a little more complicated, but let's say you get an email from your CEO saying that, hey, for all the great work that you did, we are giving you this reward, and that comes from your CEO at xyz.com to your inbox. Wouldn't you click that? The minute you click it, you go to one harmful website, and that simply steals all the data from your laptop. Right? So user can be more aware. Security always comes with user awareness and training, but can the user himself or herself build the technology to really understand the threats behind these things? Extremely difficult. But if the application that I'm using, a banking application, if the bank can implement all the solutions that I spoke about, I'm safe. If that e-commerce application can use all the solutions that I just spoke about, if my OTT platform can implement all the solutions, so basically these are all the solutions I spoke about are for those people who are selling online services, because it is their responsibility that they don't let us down as the users. Of course, users can also have some intelligence, but my thinking is it's not my responsibility. If I'm getting a banking service from abc.com bank, it is that bank's responsibility to make sure that my assets are safeguarded.
Yeah, just putting a question forward so that we
Yeah,
will have an
absolutely.
understanding that how much is this hand, or how much is in the person's hand. So the innovator should have the responsibility of taking care of the user, is what I wanted to point here.
Absolutely. I mean, user protection can also be done. Like if you're a parent, implement parental control on your local router, because that way you can easily make sure that your kids don't watch a website that is not meant for their age group. Implement parental controls. You make sure all the
Correct.
applications that you are giving it to your kids, like be it YouTube or any of the applications, enable parental control. On the OTT platform, there's a kids version and adults version. Don't let your kids watch the adults version. Create a profile for them. With the kids profile with the age group. So the only the videos or the movies or whatever online content, age appropriate, only shows up in their web browser. Not everything that you watch. So these are all, to me, these are the things from a consumer perspective. Training, awareness, and then whatever basic technologies that are available, use them to the full potential so that you're not compromising your security. At the same time, also not, making your kids or somebody at home vulnerable to these security threats. Now, just a quick recap. And again, this is my last slide, and we'll open it up for Q&A. I planned for 40 minutes of the session, but I think I'm 2 minutes over, but nevertheless. So just to recap, internet is a network of networks with no centralized control. It causes a lot of issues. In its native form, internet can cause a lot of quality of service issues, and that's where the CDN comes and plays a role. Data is growing at such a pace that internet can't scale on its own organically, and CDNs really fix that gap and make sure that there's a good quality of service delivered to the end users on the internet, for the websites that are using CDN. There are a variety of CDN solutions I spoke about. Each one has its benefit. I'm not saying what Akamai uses. DNS-based CDN is the only best thing. I'm it could be any cost-based or anything that you believe is right for your appropriate for your company. You could do that.
Akamai is the market leader. That's what the Google says.
Yes, I mean we have 70% of the market share, of course. And again, we also moved a lot into security from typical CDN services. But yeah, I mean again, you got to be conscious about what's the use case you have and then implement the same thing that's more appropriate. And the last one is advancements in the CDN technology really are helping us with so many cybersecurity issues that I spoke about. Although it's a very vast area, cybersecurity itself. Think about it on your laptop. You've got antivirus and many firewalls and whatnot. I'm not touching about all of those things. They are there. They still are required. These are complementing our existing security portfolios and then making all of us, more safer doing things online. With that, I give the floor back to Vijaya and open up for questions.
Thank you, Gauri. So anybody has questions, you can pop now. You can open your mics and then you can ask those doubts. It will be great. Not only on the CDN, anything that he has just talked about. So many things you can ask about your career, or how to reach there, how to reach where he has reached. Anything you can ask. Meanwhile, I would also request Gauri, because I think we can stretch for another 10 more minutes, to talk about SDN, because I think that also will give a little bit of overview of what they have to learn. If time permits, 10 more minutes.
We can,
it'll
but
be great.
My suggestion is probably we'll keep SDN. I'm hoping we can do more such webinars where I can share the knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm happy to do that. Yeah. And how we implement SDN in our systems, I think that'll be very interesting. Absolutely happy to share that when we have time. Good. Let's open it up to Q&A.
Anybody has any questions, please go ahead. We'll give you 5 more minutes.
Hello, this is Vivek here.
Hi, Vivek.
Hi, Gauri. It was a very nice presentation, both on the personal front and also on the technological front.
Thank you.
I have 1 or 2 small questions. You were expressing about CDN, it will cache the content and it will be good for delivery. That I can understand is for good for, say, websites which are static or recorded something. How do you handle delay for live streaming sort of things, like what we are having right now?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great question. And we can take a real example so that it's easy for you to understand, how even a live example, live video situation,
yeah,
CDNs can help. And that's actually what we do most of the time. I'm hoping all of you guys watch cricket, or some other sport. But take cricket because that's probably more of a common factor for all the Indians. And I'm sure all of you have watched cricket, online, either on your phone or web browser or something. What CDN is doing is very simple. CDN is getting one stream, or maybe for redundancy purpose, two streams from the live stadium where the match is happening from the broadcaster. I'm just taking one stream and making that stream available with hardly any milliseconds of latency across lakhs of servers that we have deployed at the edge of the internet. And because I control the delivery from the live stream that I'm taking to my server sitting at the edge of the internet, I can make sure that the reliability of the stream and the latency of the stream is as little as possible. Generally speaking, this is few milliseconds. It doesn't take more than that. And all I'm taking is one stream, and I'm making the stream broadcasting, or actually in this case multicasting, and making the stream available in lakhs of machines, which can then be consumed by millions of people. In one of the cricketing events, World Cup events, again, because of the customer confidentiality, I can't name the customer. There were 33 million concurrent connections at one single second in that match that India played semi-finals. 33 million people watching live on internet, besides hundreds of other things happening just in India. And it was delivered flawlessly. So yeah, the technology scales so nicely for live streaming. Other example, you could say it's all only for static content. What about dynamic content, where a banking transaction is to happen in real time? Because you can't cache the content, right? You need to take the credit card information, validate it real time, and then make sure that the transaction is valid and then give it back, right? In these cases, it's all about security, right? I mean, you can match the performance of the website. In this case, less of improving a lot of performance, but more about improving the security posture. Okay. Hey, by the way, my earphones have died, so I'm going to just switch to my wired phones. So just give me 1 sec, okay?
Sure, no problem.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
Hear you,
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi Gauri, this is Lata here. I just want, as an extension of the earlier question, when you said that as a copy, one copy of the stream is taken to the service provider, and that service provider is going to distribute across different content distribution centers, right? Is it possible?
Yeah, all I said is a broadcaster who has got the rights for that video. Or live match, the broadcaster is taking the live feed from the stadium, and just as an example, and they're sending that one live stream to Akamai or any CDN for that, which will be then multicast it and then broadcast it, whatever you call it as, and then make it available to all the users on the internet. Yes.
So they are going to have that infrastructure required for this distribution, right?
No, the CDN will have the infrastructure. They are going to have the technology just to encrypt the stream. Encode the stream and give it to whatever CDN they're using. So the broadcaster will only be just taking the live feed of the video, and then they will be encoding it for various types of bit rates, different types of devices. That's it. And then it comes to whatever CDN, the CDN will do the rest.
So that's the reason you said the redundancy is more important here, because from this point, the distribution is going to billions of people, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Fine. That's what I wanted to.
Yeah, and if I don't get that stream, I can't deliver it. So that's why I said, typically all these broadcasters do give multiple streams. So if one stream fails, I still get the live feed from the other stream. And it's no different from the live, we all watch the same thing on TV, right. Just that it is using satellite technology. But then satellite technology, is more of a broadcasting based solution, but it can't give you the quality of delivery that you need, because it's got limitations.
Okay, and in this example which you have given from the bank, whether the live transaction, do they really use this CDN technology?
Absolutely. Think about it. It could be, now let's say when you do an e-commerce sale, for example, right? And they say this 1 hour, happy hours. Millions and millions of people all over India, all over the world, log into that website at that 1 minute or application to really buy stuff and then do the transaction. Do you think on their own they can manage such a high volume of traffic? Absolutely no way. Almost every e-commerce company, either they have to build that scale on their own, where they're putting thousands and thousands of servers to be able to deliver so much of requests, or most cases that's super expensive for them. They use CDN technologies, because CDN can then take all these requests and then in real time serve all of the requests without having any delay. It applies to all the e-commerce portals.
Sorry, my question is on this other side. E-commerce companies do use CDN, but whether the bank is using this technology or providing the data required for the transaction, does it happen?
But data is still not with Akamai, I'm saying. Data we're pulling real time from the credit or Akamai or any CDN. No CDN is hosting the customer credentials, confidential data. Data is still with the bank. What the CDNs are doing is to pull the data in real time in a safe and secure way and then deliver it to the user, who is the banking user. And then that's part of it is when the request comes in, the CDNs can really quickly figure out if that request is legitimate. Is it from, some fraudulent, person, or is it from, a legitimate website, and then accordingly respond to that request.
I'm sorry, Gauri, I'm really extending this question. When it comes to the transaction between an end user and the bank, it is one-to-one. It is not like you are distributing the same content to others. As you said, this live cricket streaming or any movies watching on YouTube, there could be this CDN. But when it comes to bank, I am accessing the bank as an individual. The data need not be distributed among people.
Absolutely. I'm not saying Akamai or any CDN is going to keep that customer data in their system at all. All I'm saying is, let's say banking has multiple. Banking web page, for example, has multiple objects. Some objects are cacheable, their logo, their whatever basic things that can be cacheable. They can all be on the CDN. But the transaction, when it happens in real time, the CDN is playing a mediator role. That's it. It is getting the request from the end user, sending it to the banking system. Banking system is responding back, and the CDN is getting the response back and then giving it to the user. There is no way the CDNs are keeping the confidential customer data in their system. Absolutely no. It's only we are making the transaction faster and safer, and then make sure that, the end user is getting ultimately what is, requested from the user. So I'm not at all saying CDNs actually have access to the data. It's only the server is just acting as a bypass mediator and sending the request and getting it back.
Yeah, thank you.
We have time for one more question. Can anybody any fresher want to know anything?
Vijay Garu, I think Gauri can explain few more things about the specific security concerns with the CDN solutions.
Yeah, we'll work on it, Lata, definitely. Probably, we will request Gauri to take one more session. But yeah, because, 1.5 hours, we scheduled it. So we'll have to, I took his weekend and long holiday. So I can't push him beyond that.
Yeah, and, thanks a lot. It was a nice session, Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We are going to close down in a couple of minutes. Yep. Thank you, Gauri. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful insight on how one has to aim for their career, or how what kind of rigor that need to go through, and what kind of expansion mode they should get into. At the same time, doing the balancing out their life.
Yeah.
And then knowing about the greatest tool that is actually holding the world right now. I'm really, really happy with session, and I'm glad that we have thought about this session as our first launching webinar sessions, and hoping that we'll continue to have more productive sessions, which are more useful for the current generation to be more innovative and do something different to the society.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Gouri.
Thanks for having me, and I hope that whatever I discussed and shared is useful for all of you. And yeah, I wish you all the best for all of you, and then Vijaya for your company as well. So, and happy to do more sessions in the future.
1 second, somebody has a question. Let me just see that. I'm now L2 network engineer. Okay, tell me, Puvendram, if I want to adopt CDN, he's already an L2 engineer, network engineer, and he want to adopt CDN. So when you say adopt CDN means you want to work on the technology, Puvendran?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Gouri can answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, so again, there's so much of CDN knowledge available out there. You can definitely learn more about it. Even Akamai does a lot of sessions as well. When we do conduct, we do publish a lot of reports as well. So I think that will give you good context about CDN. But the best thing to do is, if you're an L2 engineer and if you want to be part of the CDN technology, there's so much of opportunity for all the L2, L3 engineers as well to be part of the operations that we run. So you develop more context about CDN, and there's so many career opportunities that you can come from. Apply for the jobs in that space.
So actually, people who are in the WhatsApp group, we have published a lot of companies list that, that are operating in this space. Of course, Akamai is coming on the top list. Other than that, Akamai, Amazon, Aryaka, like that, so many other companies are there. So ideally, CDN doesn't have a particular certification course or anything, which you can learn and say that, hey, you know what, I know this technology and I can work. So slowly you have to get into that space. So the best way is either you become a network engineer or you can learn coding and apply for those companies who are operating on those tools so that, you can get into that space.
Yeah.
Hope we have answered your question, Hemant. I think one more chat has come. Let me just have a quick look at it. No, it's not the next level. Okay, it is actually application of your learning of either networking or coding. It's an application. Yeah. So we can wind up. So anybody who is interested to know more about this, of course, we have aired all this, the entire webinar on multiple platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. All these spaces we have aired it now, and YouTube also it is there. Or you can reach out to us, and we will send it across to you also. We will also publish it in the group created for the webinars. So it will be there also. You all can have a look at it. Yes, somebody is saying, okay. He's saying that it's the best webinar. We are looking forward for more. Good. Thank you for the motivation. Yes. Okay. So now we are CompuHive Knowledge Hub is the one which you have to go to the website and then have a look at all the requirements that you have. And one of the part is Mohan's Networking Institute, and these webinars and so many things are happening. It is still under construction, so you can visit this and have an understanding about that. Reach us. You know my number. You know our team number. You can reach us anywhere. Thank you so much, Gouri. I can't thank you enough. Maybe the words are not enough, but then, I'm really, really grateful for this session.
Thank you, and have a good day, all of you. Good weekend.
Yes.
Thank you.
You too.